Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forum Friday. On Forum Fridays, I invite Mark to join me so that we can talk about what's going on at the forums. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Lynn. You're looking bright and red and Christmassy.
Thank you. Are you ready for Christmas?
Yeah, we're ready. Yeah, we
I'm
put some
ready.
lights up outside. And
With your cookies. Thank you
oh,
for
wow.
sending me the
Excellent.
mix. That's so but it was very chewy, and it's got a really good texture to it. Did not spread as much, and you gave me a mix. It was just to add I think it was like egg, was it? I can't remember.
Water.
Just water. Okay, just water. It was really, really simple.
You can use milk if you like to, but it's just water. Yeah.
Right. It's really simple. And can you tell me what's in the mix?
Well, that mix is made with the heat treated oat flour from Soulange. We had a seminar a little while back ago on that on BAKERpedia.
Right.
And one of the unique things about this heat treated oat flour is the beta glucan properties. So it's denatured, so it doesn't get all gummy and pasty like other oat flour or quick cook oats might. And so it adds a really nice texture to cookies and muffins and even breads. Breads was the main thing that Soulange was showing us and we were talking about. And so I tried it also in these cookies. So while the sugar and the fat amount in a cookie are too high to make health claims, in terms of the way the regulations are written, but they're high in beta glucan. So they'll, while you're pumping your cholesterol up, you're lowering it back down again at the same time.
So there is some functional.
But they taste really good. They give you a nice oaty flavor and stuff without having, because one of the balances with oatmeal cookies often is, if you have too much oats, then it spreads too much. If you have too much flour, then it becomes very tough and hard and chewy, right? And so it's finding that right balance between there, and the oat flour really helps with that.
Oh, good. Thank you. So if you have any questions on how to make this cookie mix, or any more questions about oat flour, heat treated oat flour, come to the forums.
Yes, I'll post the recipe.
Yeah, in the forum. Mark can share the recipe and we'll talk about it over there.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just like a standard cookie. The nice thing, the way I've put this together, is that I have to admit it happened partly by accident, because I misweighed something, so I had to make a much bigger batch of all these dry ingredients. And so you cream the sugar and the fat and just add all the other dry ingredients in, and this way you have essentially a ready-made mix, and you can just take that mix and portion it off, and then just add water to it and run cookies, right?
Hey, I love to be part of your experiments any day. Just send it over to me.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and it's very versatile. I love putting lots of different nuts and fruits in it. I'll put dried cranberries or chopped apricots or orange peel. I like putting walnuts and pecans and things like that. It's very versatile that way, right? And that's a great smell.
Talking my mouth full.
And so further in the forum, we have a newer member, Armit Agarwal. Sorry, no, wrong person. Karen, we have a newer member, Karen, and Karen is asking about low pH in cracker dough. So Karen is mentioning that they have observed that they have sometimes a low pH in the cracker dough, and that it doesn't meet their cracker quality. So having said this, we need a little more information from Karen. Yes, pH can have an effect. As your dough gets more acidic, it can become more resilient. It won't sheet very well. It'll tear on the sheeter, things like that. So we need to understand a little better. What does she mean by low pH? Is she talking about below 4 or below 3, or how low is low? And the other part, of course, is what are the quality challenges? So Karen does admit she's new to the food industry. So this sounds like one of those companies that puts engineers in charge of baking, which I've come across a lot in my day.
That happens so frequently, and that's why we're here. It's like we can't prevent that. That's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so we just need to educate people. We just need to share the knowledge.
Yeah.
And
so come back to us with some parameters that without, you're not giving away any company secrets.
Nope.
But could just give us some parameters that we can work with, and we'll be glad to advise you, because it may very well be that your pH is a little bit low, and the way you regulate that with the type of it's a fermented soda cracker that they're doing is in the fermentation process. So it's going to be fermentation temperature and time is how you're going to regulate the pH. If you're fermenting too long, you will produce too much lactic acid, and that will drop your pH. As we've been talking about recently in a seminar we had, you can always check out flour quality on the BAKERview. We had a great seminar with Chopin, and that's the other thing you want to check, is make sure that your flour quality is within the spec range, because if the pH is off on your quality flour for some reason, you need to then adjust for that in your process, right? So that you understand everything that's happening there, right?
Right. Okay, so next question. This one is on eggless fruitcake.
Mm-hmm.
Can you...
So there's a question where Armit was asking about preservatives for eggless fruitcake and wants to achieve a 3-month shelf life. Hasn't given a lot of other parameters around shelf life, but let's assume it's getting too dry or crumbly. And Mohammed contributed with some suggestions to try. He put an interesting post. He just said, try with SIN 1520 and SIN 420 II and water support SIN 263. So not all of us know what these numbers mean by heart, right? And I certainly didn't.
Nice of Muhammad to help out,
Yeah, nice of him to help out, but it also helps if he gives us a little more detail. But I did check on these. These are what are known in EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa, is E numbers, and that is Europe has standardized when people use certain ingredients that have a chemical source or some other processing, that an E number is attached to it so that everybody knows exactly what that is. It's part of educating the public is how they do that. And so these are E numbers for propylene glycol. Now it's not the propylene glycol you put in your antifreeze. Okay.
It's not, Mark. Are you sure?
This is perfectly edible. It is a humectant. It's a sugar alcohol that is pretty much tasteless. But it's a fantastic humectant. What I do find is if you get to higher levels, like if you get to like 10% or higher in the formula, it does provide some bitterness. It's not something you want to put at such high levels. Usually it's used in the 2 to 5% range most of the time. And it's used a lot in pet foods for where dogs and cats do not tolerate sugar very well. And so to keep the treats nice and soft, they use propylene glycol often in the pet treats. That's okay for them. And the E420 is sorbitol syrup, which is, of course, is another sugar alcohol that is used often in sugar-free products. With sorbitol, there are GMPs. I don't remember the levels off the top of my head, but it's also below the 10% range generally. The side effect of sorbitol is that it is a diuretic. So that means that you don't want to be spending the weekend in the washroom with too much sorbitol in your fruitcake, right?
Too much of it. Don't eat the whole fruitcake in one sitting.
Sorry, what was that?
Don't eat the whole fruitcake in one sitting.
Yes, yeah, that too, yeah. The other one I haven't seen around for a long time is quite interesting. The E263 is calcium acetate. I'm slightly familiar with that through my time with ADM. I got also involved in some confections and attended a number of the candy technology technical sessions and things like that. And so calcium acetate is often used in the candy industry to prevent water migration and keep the candies from getting sticky, right? So that you don't lose the water. It's also used a lot in dried fruits in trying basically in keeping the water from leaving the product, essentially in that sense, right? That also has specific GMPs in terms of the usage levels. And so they're all great suggestions in terms of managing the moisture in your fruitcakes so that it can keep for 3 months, which is not an unreasonable period of time.
You know, everyone else around the world eat their fruitcakes other than the U.S. Like Americans are probably the only ones that don't really eat this fancy fruitcake.
Well, they do. It's Johnny Carson way back when perpetuated this myth that there's only one fruitcake that keeps traveling around the United States.
Oh, really? Is that where it came from?
Because he didn't like fruitcake, so it's just a long-standing joke. I just remember that from being a kid and getting to stay up and watch Johnny Carson at Christmas time. So my father loved Johnny Carson.
It's one of my favorite things at at Christmas, and a lot of Americans just don't like them. I think I really do think it's because they haven't eaten good ones.
That's very true. There's
because the ones that is store-bought right here and the ones that's in the mailing catalog, they don't look appetizing. But the European ones and the English ones with marzipan in it, oh my God, those are phenomenal.
Yeah, it's some of the mass producers cheapened
them spoil it all
and made them less enjoyable because it shouldn't be just all fruit and sugar and no cake.
It should have cake in there.
Yeah, a colleague of mine, I had years ago the opportunity to teach at George Brown College in Toronto. And one of the instructors there, he was originally from Denmark, and that was his specialty. He also owned a fruitcake company called Heritage Baking, and he ran that company for decades and very successfly. And they made some of the best fruitcakes in Canada. They weren't inexpensive. They weren't outrageous, but you paid.
I don't mind paying for a good fruitcake, Yeah. It must be good. It must have the right ingredients, quality ingredients. I just need to find the right one.
I love fruitcake. I used to do some wedding cake business, and making nice wedding cakes on a nice fruitcake is really, really nice. It gives you also a substrate that you can have out at room temperature and take your time to decorate properly, and do more intricate, detailed decorations and things like that, right? So, hopefully we're helping Armit with that and all.
Yeah, good luck, Armit.
There, yeah.
Great questions, great answers. All right, next I see a question on gluten-free shelf life extension. What's with that question?
So Alexander has just posted this the other day, and they're having issues with gluten-free bread staling and crumbling after 2 days. That to me is the selection of the starches that you're using, because gluten-free systems are very much a starch-based system. and also ensuring that your baking process is not too long. A lot of these gluten-free type breads are almost more like batters rather than doughs. Some of the newer methods are more dough-like, which allows you a shorter bake time and gives you better shelf life and so on. Because when you have these batter-like consistencies and you're trying to evaporate all this water after it expands a little bit, then you create basically a platform for the starch to easily retrograde. And so what is happening is very quick staling, is very rapid staling. Also to ensure that you don't refrigerate it, freeze it or keep it at room temperature, but don't refrigerate. Refrigerating even gluten-free breads, it accelerates the staling. It just makes it stale so much quicker. And that is 2 days is then very typical of a refrigerated bread, right? That is whether it be gluten-free or regular gluten bread. So those would be, without more detail, those would be the first things I would take a look at.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Don't forget. Do you know if he uses oil or emulsifiers?
He didn't mention specifically.
Okay, so
yes,
those
you bring up a good point.
Yeah, ideal.
Yeah,
and also enzymes.
Yeah,
you got to use enzymes for gluten-free bread, otherwise it won't last more than 1 day.
Yeah, something to break the starches down and keep them from retrograding, and and the right kind of gum system is important with all that too. But emulsifiers are key, and your emulsifiers work in concert with the gums, so that your gums, your hydrocolloids, are a type of emulsifier within the system as well.
Correct. Yeah, and don't forget our discussion from the flour quality.
Yep.
Seminar.
Yeah, and even though the Mixolab and the Alveograph are instruments that were developed for the cereal industry in general, with sort of the miller in mind at first, and also for the baker's application, these instruments can be used quite effectively for gluten-free systems as well, to be able to look at what is happening with that starch matrix and or that gum blend and things like that, especially on the cooking side of it. So that if you just do an RVA on starch, all you're going to see is just the starch gelatinization and the type of starch damage that you have, relatively speaking. But if you're able to put your starch blend with your gums into the Mixolab, you're going to get much more relevant information on the mixing process and how it behaves as these cook together, because you're going to get that whole process in the Mixolab as well. That was a phenomenal session with Arnaud from Chopin. He's so extremely knowledgeable and insightful. He has a great way of not just knowing his instrument and the equipment, but understanding the baker's needs and the miller's needs and how they are used to both's advantage, right? For them to communicate.
Right. Yeah. So if you're interested in the seminar, it's now available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
And tune into our next Wisdom Wednesday, because we are going to invite Arnaud back with Mark here to talk about more of those questions next week. All right, folks, that's all for today's Forum Friday. Mark, any last words?
Well, looking forward to seeing you all in the forums. Well, have a great weekend and enjoy getting everything ready for Christmas. And
busy weekend. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.